Well, hello, everybody. This is What Was That About? I'm Dr. Tony Soldano, lead pastor here at All People's Church in Brampton, Ontario, Canada. And I'm joined with a very special guest today. First time on here, Pastor Alicia.
Hey, everyone.
Booth.
Hey, everybody.
Welcome.
Thank you.
This is your first time, correct?
This is my first time.
Yeah, and it is great. It is great to have you here.
Thank you.
Tell us a little bit about yourself before we get started. You run the youth here at the church, our ministry of young people. But just tell us a little bit about what you do apart from ministry.
Okay. I can do that. So what I do, so as Pastor said, I am the youth pastor here, but I have been a social worker in the community for the last 17 years now. I think I'm in my 17th year doing child protection work. And so the area of child protection work and working with kids and youth has been something that I have loved for years, ever since I was a little girl. And I know that other people have seen that sort of gifting in me. And so that's what I do. I currently work in the area of child welfare, and I supervise our youth success team for the region of Peel, and so specifically work with youth that are 16 and older and helping them transition to adulthood.
Wow. That's a lot.
It is a lot.
That's a lot, and you are very successful. You've received all kinds of awards and acclamations and promotions, and even named one of the top 100 black women to watch in Canada, right? And but I still believe what's more important is that you are a Proverbs 31 woman.
Thank you.
And of course, Christ lives in you, and you're just a wonderful example. And so, Pastor Alicia, we brought you on the program today specifically to talk about child protection, specifically to talk about human trafficking.
Right.
And we want to bring a greater awareness to this subject, and honestly, to this travesty within society and within our region in particular. It is a major issue, but it's not only a local issue; it's a worldwide issue. Which, by the way, I believe is getting worse and not better for all the efforts that we are putting into it. But before we go there, let's just talk a little bit about you, because you have some unfortunate history in your background as a child, and so I just want the listeners to understand not only that at one point you were victimized, but you're not a victim today.
That's right.
Because you're healed in Jesus' name.
In Jesus' name.
And we don't just say that out of a cliche, but it is the reality.
It's the truth.
But so that people understand, that you do know what you're talking about. You have experienced these things. Just, not in great detail, but just give us your background and not only what happened, but how it impacted you.
So there are so many events that have happened, but specifically that journey or that moment in my life started when I was 10 years old. And actually became sexually abused by a family member, someone that was a caregiver of mine that, I was supposed to trust and who was supposed to take care of me and love me. And, that season of my life went on for a couple of years until I just almost as a teenager or preteen, decided to just share with another youth at school, and that disclosure just started unraveling everything. And so then the authorities became involved, my parents became involved, and it became a big thing in my family that really ultimately pushed my mom in the direction of the Lord, because it was during that season of our lives as a family that she didn't know who to cry out to. And a friend of hers said, "You need Jesus in your life. He is the only one that you can lay this burden on." And that's how my mom came to know the Lord. And then subsequently, all of us as family members became to follow the Lord. And so that happened in my life for about a 2-year period where that was going on, and I didn't tell people. And then later on into my teen years, not really realizing it now, but looking back now, realized I was being groomed and lured by another individual who really was supposed to be in a position where I could trust as well. And then, they took advantage of me as well. And so I have lived experience. So when I talk about doing this work around anti-human sex trafficking and helping those who have transitioned through this and people that we now refer to as survivors, it's because I come from a very unique and place of lived experience.
Wow. So I want to restate this, that not only are you a survivor, but you are a thriver.
Absolutely.
And so we know that you are, spiritually, emotionally, mentally healed.
Yes.
But what would you say in those days, if you were to name, 1, 2, 3 manifestations of here's how this manifested in my life, what were those? What would they be? What was the emotional outcry? What happened to you as you recall? So that other people maybe can relate to what's going on.
Yeah. There was definitely sadness. There were moments of significant sadness and loneliness, partly because of during those moments I didn't feel like I could disclose and say anything to anyone. And I think that had I done that sooner, I probably wouldn't have experienced the bouts of sadness that I did. I can remember being as young as about 12 and saying to my mom one day, having a conversation, and I was crying and I was like, I think I'm depressed. And she's like, what do you have to be depressed about? You're 12, right? But, that's in her sort of ignorance of that moment and not realizing. But there was significant sadness and just a longing to want to belong, because I felt like what was happening to me caused me to be ostracized, caused me to be isolated. Definitely felt like I was so different from everybody else. Now realizing
and probably
older,
thinking you were the only one.
Definitely thinking I was the only one.
Right.
Fearful because there were threats that were made towards me, right? Like, if you tell anyone, then, this will happen or that will happen. And so there was definitely living under that fear as well that contributed to that isolation. So those were some of the key things that I can remember.
So clearly, we have levels of things that are occurring here: spiritual, mental, emotional, physical, right? This, as a young person, incredible confusion, as to, why did I do something wrong? Did I bring, all these things that I'm sure are happening all at one time. And as much as that is abuse, then we have another level where people are literally sequestered, led into, you mentioned the term anti-human, dehumanization, because when we're talking about this area of sex trafficking, basically people stop being human and they become objects to other people. And so tell us a little bit about, what is happening in our locality, because, I guess the issue is multi-complex, right?
Right.
But to me, I always kind of go back to the, economics of it's all about, supply and demand. Like, if people aren't demanding it,
right,
then there wouldn't be a supply, right? So clearly we have people that are demanding this thing, and then other people that, want to make a dollar are supplying the people as objects, But tell us a little bit about our locality, and because, you and the whole area of Brampton have been very involved in the nation, because we're doing some great work in leading this area. But tell us a little bit of what's happening from a local perspective.
Yeah. So locally, we have a strategic partnership that's happening here in Peel. And so Peel being the catchment area of Brampton, Mississauga, and Caledon. And we have worked with survivor consultants to be able to bring together local police, local school boards. We talk about different organizations, victim services, judges, hotels. Like, there's a number of things that have come together in order to promote the prevention of and intervention when it comes to particularly young ladies being trafficked. Now, we know it's not only young ladies, but a lot of the research has told us and has shown us that those that are coming forward and actually disclosing after you spend time engaging with them tend to be the young ladies. There's still a lot of research out there about young men being trafficked and being involved in sex trafficking, but a huge part of it is because of the lack of disclosure. So there isn't as much for them by way of service. But there is a huge partnership that's taking place. And I've even been told by some people who have been doing this work for a really long time, what we have in the region of Peel in order to combat sex trafficking is unlike anything in the province or even in Canada in terms of that partnership. Part of the reason why this work is so important is because when you think about something like the concept of trafficking, when you think about something like drug trafficking, it becomes a product that you use, and then once it's used, you can't use it anymore. Whereas the lucrativeness of human trafficking when it comes to the victim, their body, the human body can be used over and over and over again. And that's why it becomes so lucrative. It's been said that a trafficker can make up to $300,000 off of one person in an
Wow.
entire year.
Wow.
And so when we talk about
Wow.
people being victimized and being abused and the lucrativeness of it and the demand, as you even speak to, this then becomes part of the reason why it continues, why it perpetuates, right? And so there's help and there's support for anyone that is going through this, that wants to exit sort of this life, or, another term is the game or the trade. There's support, but you can imagine the impact that it has on one's body, right? To be violated in that way repeatedly over and over and over again. And so, yeah, there's a lot that's going on in the region, but it's because there's such important work to do.
Now, on Sunday, you and I, we were having this conversation, in front of the church, and we were talking about, it's not your Hollywood movie,
Right.
Pimp style of human trafficking anymore.
Right.
It has evolved. It has changed. We were shocked to hear because, and I knew this wasn't true, but, everybody thought that COVID would have stopped all this.
Oh,
and in
no.
reality, it probably made it worse.
Yeah.
And, but share that with us just a little bit. How has it changed from the traditional, I guess in my day, they'd be called women of the night or hookers, et cetera. You'd have this pimp, et cetera. But now it's not like that. You have, can I say it this way? Would this be, we have everyday people that are trafficking everyday people.
Absolutely.
And I'm sure that, poverty, and I want to talk about this, poverty plays a part of this. But reality is probably anybody now can be trafficked if you come into the wrong relationship. Talk to us a little bit about that.
So the local police force, they're actually one of their slogans is that, are you the one? It's actually literally a question because it implies that anybody can become a victim of trafficking based on sort of the psychological conditioning that a trafficker will use. And so pre-pandemic, the average age for youth being recruited was 15 to 17. And post-pandemic, we're finding now research is showing that it's actually ages 13 to 15, so younger. And part of that has to do with access to technology, individual devices like phones and tablets. It's not always in-person activity that's happening. So there's a term called being a cam girl. So girls that would share intimate photos of themselves, sending nudes, pictures, recording videos, things like that, to be able to solicit and make money online. That's another way that's happening. And sometimes that's happening in the comfort of a little girl's bedroom and parents don't even know while they're making dinner downstairs, right? And so these are some of the ways that in which the age has dropped, the age has become younger around recruiting. Recruitment isn't always just, some older guy preying on younger girls. Oftentimes, we're finding that it's your friends, it's your peers who are like, hey, come to a party with me. I've heard countless stories of people where they say they've gone to a party with someone, they get, whether it be drugs or alcohol or technology, jewelry, devices, things like that. And then the person turns around and says, well, you now owe me for that. I need you to do certain work. I need you to do certain favors in order to make money back. And oftentimes, that's how you get now into sort of the coercion and the psychological brainwashing and the implementation of fear, so that now you feel obligated to do this. Why? Because you might have sent a nude picture or a video, and now that person has that to threaten you with, to threaten to blackmail you and share that information with your friends or your family. So their recruiting isn't just about like older males or individuals anymore. Oftentimes it's the peers and those that you know, and it's often presented as a friendship.
Pastor Lee, let me ask you this question, because there is a group, there is a movement that, wants to legalize prostitution and bring it up to the fore, and that this is, it's normal. And of course, we know it's the age-old profession that goes way back, probably from almost the beginning of time.
Yeah.
With all that is happening and, people being trafficked younger and younger, are you surprised, other than the depravity of humanity, are you surprised that there are these voices, that there are movements out there that want to legalize this profession, if we want to call it that? Is that shocking to you based on what you see from a victimization point every day?
I am not surprised about the outcries and the requests to make more and more of what we would, what makes my stomach sick and makes my stomach turn, that people would ask, for these things to be okay and to be accepted and tolerated in society. To me, it's deplorable. Like, even in coming across some of my research, there's, books like The Pimp's Playbook, like where you would literally are getting instructions on how to lure women, to learn about the psychology psychology of a woman? What does she need? Like all of this kind of stuff. And literature like that is out there. Videos like that are out there, and they're not being taken down by local.
Are you telling me you can YouTube something like that?
You can definitely YouTube stuff like that. Wow. You can buy books like that off of like online retailers. And so the fact that that people are asking for things like this to be legalized does not surprise me, because the depravity of people's heart and wanting to pursue this is not something that society is taking a moral stance against.
Right. Wow. Mm-hmm. So here's what I've heard you say, though, and obviously we have to do a part 2 to this, but what I've heard you say over and over, there's intimidation, there's fear, there's isolation.
Yeah.
A lot of this is perpetuated because people either feel there's no way out. Mm-hmm. They have somehow, someone has something on me, and therefore I can't come forth, much like yourself where you were threatened. It sounds like disclosure is a big part of this.
It's a huge part of it.
Can you just talk to that a little bit? Maybe there's people watching, and I hope there's people watching that might be in it and can't get out of it. What would you say as we close this part 1 down? What would you say to those people?
What I would say to those people is that there's help and support. And I wish I knew, not that I didn't know that even as a young person, but I wish I believed it. I would hear about the fact that you could share, you could find trusting adults that you could share with, but I didn't actually believe it. And so I would say to anybody that's watching now, believe it, that there's help, there's support, there is infrastructure out there like never before now to be able to support you and to keep you safe and to keep your loved ones safe. I know that one of the things that traffickers do and even play on is that when they first meet you, they try and find out everything about you. And so I even share that today as a warning. Be careful how much of your personal information you are sharing. They will ask who is in your family, where do you go to school, where does your grandmother live, what do you like, how do you feel when you're at home. They play up on all of your sort of emotional faculties, and then they later take that information and they use it as a threat towards you. If you don't do this for me, I know where your brother goes to school. If you don't do this for me, I know where your mom works, because we've given them all that information. Like I know of a particular example where a trafficker has threatened to kill a young lady's mom because she wasn't prepared to do what he wanted her to do. But it's because initially the young lady shared so much information. And so be careful how much information you put out there, but at the same time, there is help, there is support that's available.
Well, Pastor Alicia, that was powerful. And my friends, I hope that this has been helpful to you. Thank you for joining us. We are going to do a part 2 on this subject, and we want to bring awareness to what is happening, and it's getting worse, unfortunately. But thank God there are answers and resources there. But thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.
All right, my friends, thanks for joining us on What Was That About?